Hello, it's Lucy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be reading you the Common App essay that got me accepted to Cornell University and Northwestern University. I'll be reading you through my entire essay and then breaking it down into different parts so that we can analyze what I wrote, why I wrote it, and why I think it is a strong essay. So with all that said, let's get started. This has been a highly requested video, so many of you probably already know who I am, but for those of you who don't, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was enrolled as a first-year undergraduate student at Cornell University, where I studied global and public health sciences in the College of Human Ecology. Then between my first year and my second year of college, I transferred from Cornell University to Northwestern University, where I started studying computer science. If you're curious about how I transferred universities or why I transferred universities, I have tons of videos on my channel that go into depth about both of those topics, so you can find them on my channel. I'll also make sure to link them in the description below. If you want to read my Why Cornell essay or my Why Northwestern essay, they're both on my channel, and similar to this essay, I read them word for word and analyze and tell you why I chose to say what I did, so you can find them on my channel. I will also leave them in the description below. Now that we have all of that out of the way, I'll read you the essay prompt. Now, the Common App essay has multiple prompts, so I chose prompt number 2. It states, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? I also want to note that although you can only choose one essay prompt, I also took themes from other essay prompts like number 1, which kind of talks about personal identity, and number 5, which talks about personal growth. While it's important to pick an essay prompt that fits the themes of your essay, I think it's also okay to draw inspiration from other essay prompts, and if none of them fit what you're going for, you can always choose the last essay prompt, which is share an essay on any topic of your choice. Now, before I read my essay, I do want to put out a disclaimer that it does contain sensitive information. It was hard for me to write, and it's hard for me to read out loud, so I really appreciate your understanding and your support while I read you this essay. The screeching brakes and hissing valves approach my middle school bus stop. Twice a day, 5 days a week, I prepare for the battle ahead of me. My shoulders tense, my abdominals contract, and my hands form tight fists. Seconds after I sit down on one of those worn-out bus seats, the torture begins again. Get your orange chicken, fried rice looking face out of here. Go back home to your chopsticks. They cannot see that I have never eaten orange chicken or fried rice, let alone own chopsticks. In these moments, I hate my olive skin, my straight black hair, and my dark almond eyes. I hate being Chinese. I tell myself that this is not who I am. I was 11 months old when my parents adopted me from China. As a child, I did not recognize the distinct differences between me and my family. However, as time passed, I started to feel out of place. In family portraits, I was the black sheep surrounded by a sea of blonde hair, big blue eyes, and pearly white skin. Strangers would ask, "Where did you buy her from?" followed by, "How much did she cost?" when they saw my small frame standing alongside my 6-foot-tall parents. I have always wanted others to see me as the daughter of the people who raised me, not the strangers who abandoned me overnight on the front porch of a school. Yet nobody could see past my yellow skin and squinty eyes. People questioned, "Are you sure you don't have your eyes closed?" I wish that my eyes were closed. I hoped that when I opened them, I would see the spinning blades of my ceiling fan and hear the chirping of birds outside my bedroom window and realize it was all just a dream. I would secretly steal my mom's makeup and cover my face and body with powder to make my skin look more white. I would tape my eyelids open, not caring about the pain of tape tugging on my skin just as long as my monolids were hidden. Slowly, I was stripping away every part of me that made me unique. Looking in the mirror, I was still not happy. As I peeled away the tape and washed off the makeup, I realized that it was time to open up. I started sharing my adoption story and was surprised to see people's faces light up with curiosity. They flooded me with questions about where I was from and how it has affected me. The positive reactions from others reminded me that being adopted is something to celebrate and made me feel more in touch with who I am. I realized that I cannot expect others to know my backstory by taking one look at me. I have to be the one to take the extra step to change the way that people perceive me. Seeing others accept me for who I am encouraged me to learn more about my culture. After discovering the importance of Chinese values like harmony and benevolence and the beauty of Chinese art, I cultivated a sense of pride for my heritage. I fell in love with Asian cuisine and learned how to embrace my culture with a box full of orange chicken and fried rice in one hand and chopsticks in the other. Transitioning to become proud and knowledgeable about American and Chinese culture was not easy. I still feel my shoulders tense up when someone jokes about my eye shape or skin tone, but I redirect that attention to expressing the importance of individuality. I do not let other people define who I am. I try to teach others about my story because sometimes it just takes a conversation to change someone's perspective. No matter the judgments that my peers hold about me, I no longer forsake my identity for the sake of others. As you can see, there are a lot of things to unpack, and while all of this is true, that is not to say that it is a complete story. In fact, it is far from being a complete story. There are many things that were left out because of word count restraints. There were also some things that were embellished just to make it a more compelling and cohesive story. And also the timelines weren't exactly as they were shown. For example, there wasn't really one aha moment where I just accepted being Chinese. It was and still is a slow and gradual process of me learning more about myself, learning more about Chinese culture. And so I just want you to keep this in mind while we talk through this essay. The way I see it is that there are two main goals when writing a Common App essay. And these are the two things that I look for when I'm reading, writing, or editing a Common App essay. The first one is that the Common App essay should be real and genuine, and it should tell a story. It's the one time that you can express yourself and you're not being judged by a number like your GPA or your SAT or ACT or AP scores. You're also not being judged like someone looks at a resume by just looking at your extracurriculars and your activities. You have the opportunity to speak through your own words and tell your own story, and I think that is very powerful. The second goal you should have when writing your Common App essay is to display your writing abilities. This is different from getting a perfect score on the writing section in your ACT or SAT because it allows you to be creative and to show your own writing style and passion without any constraints. So I think it's really important that you demonstrate all of the different tools you have in your toolkit. In my essay, I used a lot of figures of speech to add depth, vividness, and imagination to my essay. So not only was I able to tell a story, I was able to tell it in a creative, interesting, and compelling way, which I think is really important when you are writing a Common App essay. In my first paragraph, I start with, "The screeching brakes and hissing valves approach my middle school bus stop." I'm already starting by using one of the 5 senses, and that's hearing. And then I follow it with, "Twice a day, 5 days a week, I prepare for the battle ahead of me. My shoulders tense, my abdominals contract, and my hands form tight fists." So first of all, I'm using different types of sentence styles and structures to give the essay depth. I also am using a colon, which is demonstrating my ability to write different types of sentences. And I'm also giving that kind of feel in the 5 senses with like my shoulders tensing, my abdominals contracting. Like you can imagine what that would feel like. And that's what you want to do. You want to put the admissions officers in your shoes. Later, I say, "In these moments, I hate my olive skin, my straight black hair, and my dark almond eyes." While these are horrible things to say, they still paint a description of what I'm trying to portray. So this is obviously using sight. So already in my first paragraph, I'm using sound, I'm using sight, I'm also using feeling to describe what I'm going through. In the second paragraph, I say, "I was the black sheep surrounded by a sea of blonde hair, big blue eyes, and pearly white skin." So I'm using a metaphor to compare myself to a black sheep, which is also a common phrase. I'm also saying a sea of blonde hair. So obviously there's no such thing as a sea of blonde hair, but this is another figure of speech. And then I'm also just using a lot of descriptors to describe what I'm trying to portray. In the next paragraph, I say, I've always wanted others to see me as the daughter of the people who raised me, dash, not the strangers who abandoned me overnight on the front porch of a school. So here I'm also using different types of sentence structures, and then this follows by, yet nobody could see past my yellow skin and squinty eyes. People questioned, are you sure you don't have your eyes closed? This is giving examples of using quotes in an essay, and it's followed by, I wish that my eyes were closed. So here I'm saying, repeating back a quote that I was told by one of my classmates, and I'm saying back to it, I wish that my eyes were closed. So while this isn't a specific figure of speech, this also just shows creativity in like a play on words. And then I say, I hope that when I open them, I would see the spinning blades of my ceiling fan and hear the chirping of birds outside my bedroom window and realize it was all just a dream. So I'm using a lot of different descriptors here to once again paint a picture of where I wish to be. And although I don't outwardly say that I wish I was laying in my bed, I say that I wish I would see my spinning blades of my ceiling fan. So clearly this means that I'm laying down, and then I say my bedroom window, so this would mean that I'd be laying down in my bed. But once again, see how I'm not exactly just outwardly saying or describing what I'm experiencing. I'm using a lot of different senses to instead paint a picture of what is going on rather than saying it directly. In the next paragraph, I talk about using makeup and eyelid tape to make myself more white. And then I say, I was still not happy. As I peeled away the tape and washed off the makeup, I realized that it was time to open up. So here I'm starting a transition where I'm wanting change. You know, I am both physically putting these things behind me, but also mentally and emotionally getting ready to open up. And I think these two parallels fit really nicely with each other. In the next paragraph, I talk about sharing my adoption story, receiving positive reactions from others, and realizing that being adopted is something to celebrate. So if we relate this back to the original prompt about facing a challenge and how I solved it, this is how I solved it. So my original challenge was that I was getting bullied and that I didn't really understand who I was. And so I start by reaching out to others and sharing to other people my story. So this is how I start by tackling that second part of the prompt. In the next paragraph, I talk about learning more about Chinese culture, which is something that I also did out of my own initiative, which is another way that I started to tackle the problem that I had faced before about not really understanding my identity. And I even go as far to say as I fell in love with Asian cuisine and learned to embrace my culture with a box full of orange chicken and fried rice in one hand and chopsticks in the other. And while this may seem simple, I do want to point out that I mentioned getting bullied earlier in the essay for eating orange chicken and fried rice, which I had never really eaten before. So I'm taking something negative and turning it into a positive, and I'm also kind of having everything come full circle and kind of keeping this theme throughout the essay that I am taking something negative and turning it into a positive. In my last paragraph, I end with, I do not let other people define who I am. I try to teach others about my story because sometimes it just takes a conversation to change someone's perspective. No matter the judgments that my peers hold about me, I no longer forsake my identity for the sake of others. I think this ending is very powerful, and it ties in themes of not letting what others say affect me and embracing my own identity. It also ties in elements of personal identity and facing challenge and personal growth, which are all themes that come from the Common App essay prompts. Overall, I think that this is a very strong essay. It accomplishes the two goals of the Common App essay that I mentioned earlier, which were 1, The Common App essay should be real and genuine and tell your own story. And 2, it should display your writing abilities, which I did through different figures of speech and imagery and sentence structure. So I hope that this helped all of you watching. Please feel free to use any of the tips and tricks I mentioned in your own Common App essay, but still make sure to make it your own. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!